stealth technology, which is the stealth fighter you see on this slide, that tech was developed in sort of 1958. It's actually called low observation technology, and it's a mix of kind of the shape of the plane, but also the material that the plane's made in means that it's sort of invisible to radar. Now, if you think about today, it's probably still the superpowers that only have this technology, maybe the Americans, Chinese, Russian, and so on. This is a technology which is a game changer. It's disruptive for certainly nation states, but to you and I, maybe not so disruptive, hasn't really changed our lives that much, unless it's been, a factor in winning a war. So disruptive technology and technology that is disruptive is typically inclusive. The kind of technologies that everyone can access or have access to immediately, and that typically means low cost or easily deployed. Nevertheless, there are technologies which are disruptive, which are not inclusive. This idea of inclusive innovation, very important. So what are those most disruptive technologies? I put some on the slide here. The internet's certainly one of them. Without the internet, we wouldn't be having this session. And I think hopefully you can probably agree with the likes of electricity, again, kind of needed for the internet. Gunpowder was definitely something which changed the world. And there are probably lots that are not on here. But again, there are some technologies like the car, which, when they were invented, very few people had access to. They weren't that disruptive. They were and they weren't. They were disruptive in the sense that everyone knew the future was going to be the car, but they weren't really disruptive because the status quo remained for a long time. So what we tend to find is that when there's new tech that arrives, that will revolutionize something, established industry tends to ignore it for a while because they're just concerned with what's popular. It might be that the economics of adoption, it just doesn't make sense to bring those on board. So where do disruptive technologies tend to come from? Well, they tend to come from startups. Startups, being kind of high risk, rapid development teams, businesses that kind of spring up and devise something or develop something with a load of venture capitalist funding, and then bang, there's something on the market which everyone else can't ignore anymore. Now, why does it matter? And I think this quote is another great quote, actually from Darwin, which is probably a better source. And I'm going to read it to you. It's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. Never could this be more true at a time when we're in a pandemic. So I guess what this quote is telling me is that, innovation isn't everything. The ability to pivot is. And if a new technology comes along, the ability to adapt and embrace it, I think, is where the survivability comes in. So thank you, Darwin. That's still a great quote today. Now, the other thing I want to say to you is that innovation is not necessarily invention. And I know we're going to be talking a lot about technology, but you could innovate with your business model. It could be that, and I put a slide, the logo on here for a company called Automatic, which is a tech company which has no headquarters, where everyone works. They're digital nomads working across the world for an organization which has no physical presence. Or it could be you're trying to do things differently, create a new process, organizational innovation, I'm calling this. So when we talk about innovation, there's lots of ways that it could disrupt. Now, the other thing that's been happening is that when it comes to invention and radical invention, what we tend to see is a lot of step change. So if you think about, new technologies, they tend to be kind of like a slight improvement on the old ones. Very rarely do we have these radical improvements, which are just, brand new things. And the research I've been looking at is suggesting that these kind of brand new discoveries are happening less frequently than they used to. So we're getting more incremental innovation and less radical innovation. And that could just be that, maybe the human race has discovered everything. I mean, it kind of stands to reason in a way. So when I talk about some of the examples later, I'm going to try and focus on the really radical ones. To give you some more context, think about some radical inventions. There are lots of things that are going on. That it could be that the barrier to radical invention is cost. It could be that it's just our ability to engineer something. And I think about Iranian centrifuges in their kind of nuclear program. It could be that there's a prohibition on some of the technology, or that we just don't have any R&D capability. So we'll come to look at some barriers to this idea of innovation later on as well. Now, in 2012, the UK government went off and it said, okay, what are the great technologies? 2012 seems like a long time ago. And it came up with this list. It actually came up with 8, and then it added 2 more at the end. And I think these are still a good, this is still a pretty good framework for me for great technologies of today. And hopefully the 8 here, and in fact the 10 here, probably won't be too unfamiliar to you. And in fact, many of the webinars that we've been putting on during this series have covered things like Internet of Things, big data, and so on. Now, we've started to see some real life applications of these great technologies. So autonomous vehicles being one of them, which has kind of come from autonomous systems. We've seen Elon Musk in his Starlink, which is a group of satellites which are beaming down as we speak internet to us. And that's kind of like, satellite constellation technology. And we see examples of artificial intelligence every day. Later on, I'm going to talk about, like I said, a subset of these, and one of my favorite here, which is quantum. So just hold the thought that, in 2012, we kind of mapped the great technologies. So what about in the near future, in the next year or so, or what sort of technologies are beginning to roll out which might be new to you? I've got 3 slides which cover the ones that I think are quite exciting. The first one is the digital currency. And, we're all being told not to use physical currency at the moment. And we know that there are things like Bitcoin out there. But did you know there's a consultation currently on the digital euro? These are national international currencies which are also going digital. So that's quite an interesting change for me. And really, a concept like the digital the euro has been, it's a result of blockchain technology, which is a technology that means we can trace what's happened to that digital information, which might be currency. So watch out for that one. The other thing that's caught my eye, over the years is 3D printing, and this idea that we're all manufacturing at home or wherever we are. And we're going to see a sort of mini revolution in automation technology. At the moment, the eyes are on construction, so construction robots. I think this graphic here is a bit of a joke. I can't imagine quite some plasterboard being carried around by a robot, but the expectation is we will see robots starting to build things. Maybe in a high rise, you've got instead of having someone working up there, there'll be some kind of mechanical device putting together steel frames and so on. And that could be a slight worry to any building tradespeople, but I think we're going to see that quite soon. And an article in the newspaper just the other day about small nuclear reactors. This is something that's been going around Parliament for many years and has finally got the green tick. So expect to see a bubbling small nuclear reactor in your local Tesco's soon. The UK going to put in 16 of these across the country. I suppose they are, if you like, the kind of reactor you'd find on a submarine. So they are going to power neighborhoods. That technology is quite old. It's not particularly disruptive technology, although the miniaturization is the point here, that some disruptive technologies are a factor of size and scale. The actual disruptive technology for Rolls-Royce, who are developing these, is the way that they are going to be built in a modular fashion So anyone who's going to receive one of these small nuclear power stations is literally going to get a bunch of, trucks arrive with pre-built components. They get stuck together, and literally, boom, you've got your reactor. They won't give anyone any sleepless nights. Other things then that are coming or just around the corner, laser weapons, an article out just the other day about our military adopting these. And of course, Boris yesterday talking about the big spend in military. So laser weapons are here, as is electric armor, flexible screens for things like mobile phones. So, no longer do we have these devices that we stick in our pockets and feels like you've got a lump in there, that you just wrap them up. Technology on the right-hand side, which I know is here today, but isn't really well adopted, or maybe it's a secret, is the pulse jet engine. A very simple engine, believe it or not, but one which is incredibly powerful. And basically, you propel something through the bang. So instead of having this engine that's you get this bang, bang, bang. And you get this incredible speed. So you can probably see, and I'm demonstrating hopefully, that there are technologies out there which are here today and not evenly distributed. 3 more for you that I think are real game changers. You've probably heard of the one on the left here, which is Hyperloop, and this is basically all happening in America at the moment. But basically, it's these vehicles that go down this vacuum tube, and they use magnetic levitation to reach these incredible speeds. 700 miles per hour, stunning speed on land, which is, I guess, disruptive to the airline industry, and maybe even to the automotive industry. If you think about people having, large vehicles, maybe even the logistics transport industry. And I believe that technology is, well advanced. In the middle, you've got the airless tire. I think this could be, this is certainly a great invention, more about a sort of manufacturing technology. And you can imagine a sort of airless tire as your spare. The one I think that's probably the most revolutionary here on this slide, though, is the aerogel, which is on the right-hand side. And this is effectively, it's a gel which the moisture has been taken out and a gas reinserted. And what you end up with, people are describing as frozen fog. It's incredibly light. It's one of the lightest materials that exists, yet it's got incredible insulation properties. You can see here the picture's actually a Bunsen burner underneath a flower, and nothing is happening to that flower. Can you imagine, how we can use this material to revolutionize things that we build? So some really exciting disruptive technologies that are just around the corner. I'm going to give you another 3 because I'm in the zone, and I said that this was going to be the session where I, really go to town with some of these ideas. Augmented reality is here today. It's the idea here is that we overlay a computer world into our real world, and that's almost certainly helping engineers look at their equipment, identify where problems are. But also it's helping with things like training, where I've seen food factories, for example, where people have used these overlays, computer overlays, to help them with what they're doing, gulleting fish or whatever it is. We're going to see a revolution in machine vision. That's where machines can identify what's going on. And to an extent, that's happened in autonomous vehicles. And then we're going to see a food revolution, and we're starting to see this. Can you imagine the idea of urban farming, where you've got cows walking around in skyscrapers? It's going to bring food much closer to market. And we're already seeing, farms in cities. That idea is accelerating as we speak. So some really great things to look forward to. We've got COVID-19, how depressing. Look at how life is going to get better with all of these things. So what about the, the more distant future? Is there anything that could really change our world that's just around the corner, but there are still problems with the actual technology itself? Well, I've got 4 examples for you here. Can you imagine the possibilities of a frictionless bearing? So, and what we're calling this high temperature superconductivity, and this could be a bearing that's on your car, that's on your wind turbine. It will allow us to massively increase the efficiency of our mechanical devices. So some quite interesting ideas there. We could even have, and I'm surprised no one's done this, I might be giving you $1 million idea today, a kinetic power storage unit, a rotating mass, which effectively is spun up and then spun down to create electricity. If you had a frictionless bearing, that would be a great way of storing energy, I think. How about an electronic nose? We're getting close. We know that dogs are great for sniffing out, maybe even cancers. Could we have an electronic nose that sniffs out COVID-19 or a bomb or bad food in our refrigerators? That's something that people are looking at. We are also facing a problem with raw materials, and we talked about Tesla and batteries. Some of the rare materials that go into those. Maybe asteroid mining, space mining is going to have to be something that we look at to get more of those materials. And the final one I've got on this slide is swarming robots. You imagine drones. You've perhaps seen the drones that went off. I think it was the Beijing Olympics that did this fantastic display, and that was an example of swarming robots. But could these drones be a much smaller drone? And could we then use those swarms to, say, defend ourselves? If you were in the military and suddenly you came under attack, can you imagine a drone of a swarm of drones that come to shield you? So again, lots of disruptive technologies potentially in the slightly longer future. Okay, well that's quite a ramble from me in many ways, but hopefully giving the idea that disruptive tech can be quite exciting, but also it needs to be inclusive to be disruptive. I'm just looking in the chat here. I can't see anything that anyone's put in immediately, but I will open up to anyone who wants to say something at this point. Okay, no, all right. Well, that's made it easy for me. You're all very shy. Maybe you'll warm up as we go through to the next set. So just to reiterate, disruptive technologies here, I'm reading from the green, significantly alter the way businesses or entire industries operate. It often forces companies to change the way they approach their business for fear of losing market share or becoming irrelevant. And I suppose that's the danger, isn't it? If we ignore these things for too long, then suddenly we could find ourselves out of business. And if you don't have the foresight, if you don't know what's coming, then you could quite quickly run into trouble, because it could be that the end of your industry is on its way and you just haven't seen it yet, and you need to do that, what Darwin said, to pivot, to change and adapt. Now, I've got some examples of things that have been quite disruptive here. Tesla, certainly, in the mainstreaming of the electric car, that has changed people's attitudes towards electric vehicles. And they've done that because they've been quite clever with their battery technology. They're kind of first to market. Everyone's playing catch up there. They've made it affordable. Again, this inclusive idea. And they've got all the fast charging and so on. So they've got the infrastructure. You might know what this second item here is in the middle. Maybe an item that's on your Christmas list. It's not on mine because my hair's not good enough, but it is the Dyson hairdryer in this example. And the cool thing about the Dyson hairdryer is that it's bladeless. But that's not really the invention. The invention was the cyclone, or the harnessing of the cyclone to do the sucking. And Dyson got away with selling a lot of these, and a lot of we can't call them Hoovers, that's a brand name, vacuums, and that was disruptive to everyone else, because they could then have the sort of bagless vacuum, which saved people a lot of money. But there are also disruptive business models, and Uber is the one that I cite. The idea that you can get a taxi with your app, and you kind of prepay, and it disrupted the whole taxi industry very quickly overnight, and still is. So, we've got to watch out for these disruptive business models and technologies. Change is coming. That's my message to you today. I've got lots of examples of where change has arrived. Who remembers going to Blockbuster DVD and selecting a DVD, and, overnight we've got streaming video, totally killed it. And in many ways, the internet, cloud computing has killed physical media. I'm buying less CDs, I'm downloading my music, I'm not even buying computer software. Everything seems to come to me in a digital package. So that's certainly a trend, that's happened. And wireless internet came along, killed the internet cafe. Mobile phones came along, killed the payphone. What's next? The way to really, or for me to kind of identify these things is, and I put the eyeball here, is to just keep your eyes open. You could look at patents. They give you a lot of clues, although it's quite heavy going to read patents. Certainly, read magazines, tech magazines. I think that's a great source of information. Even the newspapers are a pretty good indication of stories that, particularly the Financial Times, believe it or not, of companies that are investing in things will give you some clues. You might look at Kickstarter. That's a website where people are wanting money to develop things. I used to head off to Germany every year and go to something called CeBIT. That was a technology show exhibition. There's one in Las Vegas called CES. So think about the things you can do, I suppose, to stay ahead of the curve and to educate yourself about all of these exciting new technologies. What about adoption then? Well, the thing I wanted to tell you today is that often when you have got a new invention, and I've put some examples here on this slide, they're not the best. So the example I've got for you, iPod, the first iPod, that sort of had a terrible battery that died after so long, caught on fire. One of the Suzuki cars that was first launched, that was the sort of the first SUV, toppled over. The humble Philips Hue light bulb, which is a smart light, even today has a problem whereby if the power goes off in your home, the power comes back on, the light bulb doesn't remember its previous state and it comes on. So in the middle of the night, your lights will be turned on. Why am I telling you all this stuff? Well, because there is this thing called the hype cycle, and I put it here, where basically, everyone gets hyped up about an idea, and this product or new innovation or new technology has this peak of expectation, and then it comes to market, and there's kind of this lull where people realize it's not as good as the hype, or it's got a problem or an issue, and then it takes time for that to for those things to get resolved and distilled, which is where being an early adopter is often really a bad idea. It's great to have the new fancy tech, but it's not quite ready. And a lot of these tech companies are launching stuff which is still broken, and they go and fix it after the date. So that's, I suppose, a lesson learned for everyone. And that curve is, I think, fascinating in terms of how these technologies get into the community. So certainly a risk to disruptive technology is the speed to market, and being first to market isn't necessarily a good thing. Being second to market is probably just as good. Some of these disruptive technologies, they're also so disruptive that they destroy what I'd call healthy competition. And, that's a real tragedy. Even if I think about the likes of EasyJet and Ryanair, who had disruptive business models, they started to kill off the established players like, BA and Virgin, to the extent that they really struggle, and they had to change the way that they worked. But now we're in this time where there's more fragility in that airline market, and EasyJet suffering billions of pounds worth of losses. If they disappear, we're going to be stuck with kind of a BA and Virgin, which is not the BA and Virgin it used to be. I'm not sure I've told that story very well, but definitely competition is healthy. And some of these technologies, of course, are you have the slides slightly broken up in the word in uncharted territory. You know, they are technologies which are maybe less reliable or not proven. And we've got these other problems which come with early tech, like you know, the privacy wasn't quite sorted out, or the safety wasn't quite as assumed as it could have been. I mean, 5G, you know, here's a technology where everyone's up in arms saying, well, you know, does this harm people? And the scientists will say no. But actually, you know, is it one of these things that in 10, 20 years time, it will creep up on us and we'll say, well, actually, there was a heating effect of 5G which caused cancer. You know, smoking and cigarettes has proved that this can happen. Equally, Wi-Fi, you know, here's Wi-Fi, it's safe, everyone. We could find in 50 years time that the exposure to Wi-Fi over long periods has actually harmed us in some way. So we've got to take that into consideration. And then there's ethics. I don't want to talk about ethics for too long because I have worked in a university and they spend far too long thinking about it. So when something goes mainstream, when your tech goes mainstream, there are a number of things to actually make sure that it's adopted. And these are the things in the diamond here. You've usually got to prove that there's some kind of roadmap to get investment. It always helps when there's some kind of policy driver, when, you know, government says that everyone should have an electric car and we'll ban the sale of diesels by 2030. The economics has to be right, of course, and you probably have to have a pretty good safety kind of conscious or track record or ability to convince consumers in terms of a product that your product will be accepted and adopted. And you also need those geeks like me who are the early adopters, who will spend lots of money on something new. Just think about the microwave. You know, we've all probably got a microwave oven at home. When they first came out, there was a lot of stories in the press about people getting radiation sickness, you know, from standing in front of a microwave. Was that a fear associated with the technology, or was it rational? Were the early microwaves really poor at shielding the microwaves? You know, we're not quite sure. So it pays to predict the future. And I've got, you know, many stories of my own where I've gone to buy something. I've gone to Curry's. You know, I did this myself years ago. I went there. I understood that there was something called MP3, which was a digital music format. And nevertheless, I went in. I asked the sales guy. I said, look, I want something to, you know, I've fed up with my Discman and my cassette tapes. I want to listen to digital music, you know, and what shall I buy? I've heard that there's this MP3, there's this digital music format out. I'm thinking about buying one of those players, but they're really expensive compared to mini disc. You know, what should I do? And the chap told me, he said, oh, mini disc, that's the future, you know. So I went off and I bought a mini disc player, and of course within a year I was robbed because it was useless. So it does pay. Okay, another interlude here. I can see one chat item. Really good question about landline. You know, this is something that feels like a con, doesn't it? We're all paying landline fees when actually, with the advent of 5G and mobiles, maybe we could get away with not having a landline, but we need the landline for the broadband. But maybe we'll get satellite broadband. So yeah, good question. I think the landline, apparently I think there's something in the paper about 20% less people having a landline. Anyone not got a landline on here? I don't see too many hands up. Anyone else want to ask a question at this point?
I was just going to ask you, Fraser. Just obviously, most of the folks attending today are likely to be from SMEs, and it's just whether you have a view as an organisation. You know, that obviously SMEs are smaller and so on. Would you and I know there's probably no sort of general, you know, sort of specific answers, but do you think it's better to be a disruptor as an SME, or to look for the trends and go with that flow, as it were?
it probably depends on your workforce and how sharp they are, what kind of culture of innovation you've got. And of course, what you're currently doing, whether you are in an industry which is going to be affected by some of these disruptive technologies, you can see that and you need to change. Or whether you've got something in your bag which you feel is truly innovative that you can bring on to a point in which you will be the disruptor. It's very difficult for large corporations to disrupt because they are so cumbersome. They're not very agile. The beauty of being an SME is that you can pivot quickly. But I would say that there are all kinds of opportunities, like thinking about reselling, thinking about import, export. If you know something is disruptive and you've got your eye on it, and I've been to CeBIT in Germany where I've seen, I saw the LED light bulb years before we had LED light bulbs in this country. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, I could strike a deal here and get some in. So it's a difficult question to answer, but the agility for me is a real advantage for an SME.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Fraser.
Okay.
The only other thing I was going to mention, you cited a few areas that are quite good for sort of looking at what might be coming over the horizon. Just a couple came to mind. It's been around for a while, but the TED Talks are quite interesting in terms of just opening your mind up to new stuff. Really, I was sort of find that is quite useful. What people might try. And then there's obviously lots of sort of websites and so on, but again, one that I found quite interesting is Springwise, and you can subscribe to a weekly update where they share details of latest innovations, particularly in that case around, I think, sustainability and the environment. But there's quite a few things like that. If it's sort of if it's of interest, quite useful to get those sort of things through, or to visit those sites.
I definitely sign up to that idea. And by the way, we do have an innovation agency, Innovate UK, in this country, which will fund and sponsor your innovations. In fact, they've just got a new innovation round that was, they had one that was 100% de minimis funded. So if you've got an idea, there are ways to grow it, even with kind of 100% grant funding if you're good at writing bids. So we these ideas can be propelled. Okay, let me carry on because I don't want you to miss any of the content.
Sorry, Fraser, just noticed one more in the chat from Kevin.
Okay.
Idea about potentially developing a cordless. We said he hasn't had a landline for several years, but the idea about developing a cordless dog leash. Kevin, I don't know if you're able to unmute and share your thoughts on that, but that sounds pretty interesting.
Obviously, the patent's pending, maybe.
It'll take a bigger brain than mine.
Well, having got tangled up several times with our Labrador puppy recently, I think it's a great idea. So I thought you'd gone quiet because you'd actually thought I've said too much. So,
I didn't realise I was still unmuted.
Believe it or not, Kevin, that is an example of something that that everyone could want. That you've got to think about the problems that exist in society and the needs. There is a need, isn't there? It would be great to have this cordless dog leash. Believe it or not, there is a technology which could enable that. It's called a quantum fence, and I'll let you look that up. So let me carry on. Here we go. Nicely prompted. Quantum is one of those words that you might hear a lot in James Bond films. It's one of my most exciting new technologies, and people haven't got their heads quite around this because when they hear the word quantum, they always refer to quantum computers. And yes, quantum computers are the things that are exciting the IT industry. I'm not going to try and explain how quantum works because I'd be talking about qubits and entanglement and a branch of physics which I don't understand, and very few people do. But I guess for me, physics is the first science, and people are going to get enraged now because everyone has their favorite science. So quantum is really an exciting technology. The quantum computer, the reason why people are excited about quantum computer is because it will compute things billion times faster than a standard computer. Now that is exciting because we can start to solve maths and things very easily. And the quantum computers exist today. Again, they're not evenly distributed, and they are kind of in their infancy. And they've got all kinds of problems with things like noise. So, these are kind of sprawling computers in massive rooms, which are in special environments. They need their own special programming. And the science is still not fully understood. So sometimes the answers they give are not quite right. But the issue with quantum computing, which will probably be here, in maturity within, say, 15 years, is that if you can process things very, very quickly, that does things like it breaks encryption. So, any kind of encryption around your bank account is broken instantly, because the basis of encryption is with traditional computing, those encryption algorithms can't be broken within the lifetime of the sun. So you can imagine for nation states, the race for quantum computing is very, very, very important, because suddenly you've got a technology which could be devastating in terms of cyber attacks. So quantum computing is interesting, yes, but there are many other branches to quantum. Quantum cryptography is what I just hinted at there. So if you've got quantum cryptography, you need a quantum computer to break the quantum cryptography, and you're back to the idea that your cryptography is safe again. Now, the UK has a quantum cryptography fiber already between Bristol and London, so it's being used to shield our communications today. But the other things that are going around quantum, and probably the most exciting for me, is sensors, quantum sensors. And these are sensors which harness gravitational waves. So we've been able to detect now and measure gravitational waves, which open up a whole bunch of possibilities, including something called quantum clocks, which are very, very precise clocks. And precise clocks are important for a number of reasons, not just financial transactions, but also things like space exploration. I'm going to give you here a whole bunch of implications of quantum technology. And some of these are very, very real and a bit scary. Seeing around corners, reading minds. Apparently the mind is people think the mind is a quantum machine. Quantum encryption I've mentioned. Being able to see through walls. I mean, this could have real privacy implications if there was a quantum sensor on your phone. We can do away with GPS now because we've got these gravitational waves, which means you can pinpoint your location on this planet or any planet without satellites. And this has got amazing implications for submarines because they don't need to submerge anymore. And there's I've seen a box running from Toshiba doing exactly this in the Navy. Can you imagine the revolution in discovery of things like oils? We could actually have a new oil supply because we can find the stuff so much easier. I've mentioned space navigation. The list is quite long here. And the quantum fence, by the way, that's the one for the dog lead that you can go off and Google. But my story to you today is that quantum is going to change our world. And if you want to look at some of the companies that are leading that race, BT, interestingly, are also in there. Teledyne, I think they're based in Lincoln, Teledyne, so that's one to go and knock on the door of. Quinetic, mainly in the defense sector, and I've mentioned Toshiba. What else then? What other radical technologies are coming away? Definitely fusion, nuclear fusion. It's a technology which has been talked about for a long time, and I suppose it's the opposite of fission, where you slam two particles together, creates incredible heat, the kind of reaction that's going on in the sun. And the problem has been, how do you contain that plasma, that heat? And people have been working on that for some time. It's been cracked. The Minister for Energy has already come ahead and said that this will be ready by 2025. With this just 5 years away, it offers almost unlimited energy with no nasty side effects, no fear of meltdown, All it needs is a bit of distilled water or lithium. Lithium's a bit harder to find, and a bit of hydrogen, and boom, energy problem solved. You know, could nuclear actually be the power source that's going to take away our need for any other? The government will tell you we need a mix, but what does this mean for the Humber's investment in renewables? Big question marks there. Now, sticking on the theme of energy, hydrogen is certainly something I'd put my money on in the sort of shorter to medium term, and that's because of a number of reasons. And I've given you this nice graphic about the refinery that's just down the road from me, actually, sort of using hydrogen. But hydrogen is, a sort of green. It's a kind of excellent gas because it can be stuck into the existing pipes of our gas network and mix with our traditional gas, and maybe we're going to get some new boilers or something, but we can sort of power our existing infrastructure of hydrogen. That hydrogen is coming from a number of sources. It could be methane, which is where the idea that some of our heavy industries can start to create the hydrogen, or you've got this green hydrogen, which is coming from electrolysis, and electrolysis is all about using up sort of salt water and putting electricity on it to get the gas. So we're going to see a revolution in hydrogen. The hydrogen economy and how all that fits together, I think, is particularly important for the Humber, because there'll be a need to store it, a need to pipe it. It will tap into our old industry and our new industry. I think there's even things going on in, is it Thedlethorpe, the old gas facility there near Mablethorpe, being repurposed for hydrogen. So definitely a technology that we can all benefit from locally. And of course, the hydrogen cell is here today. Hydrogen cells are already being used in cars, in trains, and it's being talked about for aeroplanes. Why is the hydrogen cell exciting? Well, actually, it's much better than the battery for a number of reasons. It's much more durable in cold temperatures. It will go further. You can fill it up quicker. Could hydrogen, the fuel cell, be the death of the electric car? I think it will, believe it or not. I think anyone who's going down the electric car route is probably got it wrong. So watch out for that. Here we go, fuel cell. And the problem, I suppose, that the awkwardness about the fuel cell is the whole stuff in the circle here. So with electricity, it's quite easy to package and distribute, but we've got some other issues with the fuel cell. And the final radical one in this section I wanted to talk about was nanotechnology, to be precise. And this is really about controlling matter on a nanometer scale. So if you think about an ant, 1,000,000 times smaller is a nanoparticle. And we've started to master the ability to manipulate these tiny particles. They're kind of engineered. And that means that we can do things like have very, very tiny beads in liquids. It's caused a few issues, believe it or not, environmental issues at the moment. But it also means we can have tiny probes. We could have in the future a nano robot that goes in and fixes yourself up. And we've seen some. Can't think of the film. There is a film out there, isn't there, about these tiny robots that go into people? That could be a reality. But I think more exciting for me is the idea of thermopower, which is where you've got materials that take heat waste and they turn it into electricity. So can you imagine your factory where you've got these machines that bubble away? Suddenly they're going to be very, very efficient. Or even a house with some kind of material that captures the wasted heat and turns it back into electricity. So a very exciting technology. Okay, well, that was the really exciting bit. Has anyone got any thoughts here that I've missed?
Fraser, Ian's raised a question just now, actually. What happens to the oxygen when hydrogen is generated by electrolysis?
Oh, very good question. I'm not even sure I know the answer to that. You'd imagine it was stuck in people's ventilators when they're suffering from COVID in hospital, wouldn't you? It must be stored and burned off, maybe. I honestly don't know. I really don't know. ITM Power are the company that seem to be leading the field in electrolysis. There's a company that's just creating these very efficient electrolysis machines or units. Does anyone else know on what happens to that oxygen on the call?
Oh, Ian, I think I can see, but I think you're muted. Or maybe not actually, not muted, but there's no sound coming through, unfortunately.
No, I'm sorry, and can't hear. Don, I'd love to know the answer. Stick it in the chat if you can. I dare say it's a very, I think the problem with electrolysis is it's not a particularly efficient process. And you've probably all done the experiments at school with the, you know, the test tube and the bubbling. You know, I think, and of course it requires electricity in. Okay, maybe Ian, you'll find your microphone and you'll be able to tell us all, because I want to learn on this webinar as well.
Yeah, really sorry. And I've had a look at the settings just to see if there's anything stopping you speaking, but there's nothing at this end, I think. So at least nothing obvious anyway, I'm afraid.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
you're back. Yeah, great. That's perfect.
I've done a lot of reading about generating hydrogen, the blue hydrogen, the green hydrogen, and nobody has ever mentioned what happens to the oxygen during the electrolysis process. It's a very valuable resource, and here too would have been regarded as more valuable than gaseous hydrogen. And nobody seems to be doing anything with the oxygen. Strange.
It does seem unlikely, doesn't it? You'd thought someone like, I don't know, BOC might have been interested, or maybe this is your making, Ian. Maybe this is your opportunity to jump in there and say, we'll have your wasted oxygen, and we're going to put it in bottles and people can breathe it, and we call it air from the Humber.
Indeed, I'm too busy 3D printing, but I would just like to know what they're doing with it, because it's half the process wasted, isn't it?
It does. We need to go and look that up, don't we?
Yeah.
I will try and find out. Thanks. That's a really good observation.
Or maybe a very good opportunity for somebody with a need for gaseous oxygen.
Yeah. Look, I think there's, like you say, let's not waste it. I would be interested to see what this company ITM Power are doing, because, like I said, they are the people who are making these machines, the electrolysis machines. So maybe that's the place to look. But thanks.
Right. If you find out, please do tell us.
I will. It won't be within the next 20 minutes, but I'll try.
Good man.
Right, let's crack on, because we've got only a few minutes before we've got to 11. I don't want you to have fallen asleep by lunchtime.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Sorry, another question. Yeah, let's just go for it.
Sorry to interrupt, and apologies. I feel like a lurker. My camera doesn't work on this laptop. I dropped it, so I'm just a lurker in the background. I had a question. I've got a question basically about ethics. So where you're talking about something like quantum technology, and we're talking about reading minds, for example, ignoring the military side, but when these sorts of things may be deployed within the general public, where is the boundary? Like, where's the boundary between governance and like ethics, or the sort of what's good for the moral fiber of society? Or do you think where technology is sort of being looked at just as if you're doing something that's out of the box and that is making money, that's a sign of its progress?
Goodness.
Sorry,
yes.
that's very...
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, these are really important questions you put forward. And, you know, I think about the example of small nuclear power, which you can imagine is quite troubling for some people. The government, thankfully, has debated this in Parliament quite a lot. And the government also has a program called ScienceWise, which is it's a public engagement program which involves people in discussing or considering the ethical issues in order to help policymakers legislate. Now, I suppose the problem is the legislation for me always comes far too late. And you know, we could argue that the legislators just aren't very good, but there are avenues for society to have a say in some of the development and the policies that wrap around these technologies. I think there are issues though. I mean, you know, we're living through an economic crisis, and the temptation will be to develop these things and kind of sideline some of those ethical concerns. But let's hope that the regulators, that the committees, that the scientists are there to consider the implications. The quote I like is from Winston Churchill, actually, which is that experts should be on tap, not on top. Whether you agree with that or not, I think would be interesting.
Thank you. That was a
All
very
right.
garbled question. You made good sense of that. Thanks very much.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm pleased. I'm not sure I make always the most sense. So let's crack on. Good question today. I'm liking that. So look, I mentioned the crisis. Look, we're in times of COVID-19. What's happening in terms of our spirit of innovation, and lots of things are happening actually. History tells us that when there's a crisis, actually people respond very well. They do tend to innovate. With crisis, there's opportunity. But it does seem like we're living in an era of giant tech companies. And of course, we need investment to innovate. And that might kind of start to dwindle as the investors lose money and the banks lose money. So this could go a number of different ways. We're certainly seeing fear as a weapon, by the way, which is a bit of a concern. How will our entrepreneurs adapt? Will they still be willing, and you know, will they still be able to put their necks out and take high risks? I quite like thinking about what's happening to local companies on a sort of macro level. So I've seen some great innovations. You know, I think about Papa's Fish and Chips down the road in Cleethorpes. They adapted their whole delivery model towards, you know, click and collect. And just something simple like having an app using their using that internet technology has helped them survive. So we're certainly living through interesting times. If you were to adopt a culture of innovation, what would you need to do? You know, this is a good question for any business, and I've got some ideas. I think you certainly need to give people time, and you need to design spaces for people to be productive. If you go to the offices of Google, you will see that they've got hammocks and things and suites and all kinds of stuff lying around their offices, but they've also like painted grass on the wall. They've tried to make their working environment a kind of a thinking one. They give their employees what they call Google time, which is, you know, like a set number of days or hours within their working pattern, which allows them to work on whatever they want. And that's developed some truly fantastic innovations. I think Google Mail perhaps was invented during that time. So you need to give people space. Then there's a concept called skunk works. I'm going to talk about that later, which is where you kind of you allow a group of people to break the mold, to go off and innovate in an environment which frees them from those corporate restraints. They can go and do whatever they want. They've got the money, they've got the people, they've got no bureaucracy to stop them. We do, of course, need money. I mentioned Innovate UK, but I think it's quite healthy when companies, large corporations like Statoil, they come ahead and they say, these are the problems we've got. Can anyone fix it? So we need to set challenges. Innovation tends to come from when you mix the disciplines. We're seeing this in things like agri-science, you know, where we've got engineers, we've got farmers coming together. So we need to start doing more of that. We need to start welcoming new ideas into the culture of how we work. So when someone comes forward and they say on the webinar, they say, hey, what we need is a dog leash. Without the leash, we don't all laugh and say, you're off your head. We say, actually, it's a great idea. And you know what? I think you can fix it. We need to spend more of our money on R&D. And, you know, we're quite bad in this country at recycling money into R&D. So we need to accelerate that innovation. We certainly need to leverage diversity, and we need to get people in the habit of creatively solving problems. So you know, not always saying no, but saying, you know, anything's possible. I think that's a really great attitude. So the drivers of innovation are here, and responding to a crisis is number two. You know, we should be in a golden age of innovation. But I really like number one, this idea that you're frustrated with the status quo. It could be that, you know, you are someone who is horrified at the idea of climate change, and thus you go and innovate. So some great drivers there at the moment for all of us. The moral imperative, I think, is probably, Kaz, what you were just bringing up, perhaps there as well. The barriers are on the other side of this slide. You know, the idea that we want to avoid risks, or we don't have the money, or these things distract us and they cost us time. Also innovate then with the other things that go on in your business. I mentioned this idea, this concept of organization innovation. How about the way that you charge, you know, the revenue streams? There are lots of different ways you can innovate here. Just think about, you know, renting, pay-per-view, free trials, penalties. I've mentioned Ryanair before, but I'm going to mention them again. They make most of their money from selling the planes at the end of their period of the lease. You know, it's not all about the fee that's paid by the passenger. And they literally, you know, don't they? They just break down the cost of everything. You want a Wii, you're going to have to pay 10p for it. So think about, you know, ways that you can innovate with sales effectively. Now, if you were starting down this innovation journey as an SME or any business, you would, here's a linear path that you could go down about sort of, you know, identifying problems, brainstorming. Some people have called it, I'm not sure we're allowed to say that anymore, discovering pinch points, ideation, prototyping. You know, this is the kind of process that the journey you might take. There's a box I've added in for you, which is called Pretotype, which some of you might not have heard of before Prototype. And this is where you basically cheat in your prototyping. To give you an example, speech recognition. There was a company that claimed that they've got speech recognition and they wanted to deploy it. What did they do? They used someone's ears and brain to actually do the speech recognition in their technology stack. So you can actually cheat and circumvent your prototyping with pretotyping. But I won't, you know, I won't get too geeky with you. Another opportunity we've got is something called low code. So these are software programs which anyone can use. And it could be something like LabVIEW, which I encourage you to look at, which automates industry, which is basically a graphical programming language. So there are interfaces that allow you to innovate in a much more rapid way these days. You don't need to be a geeky programmer to do programming because you can drag and drop boxes. And that's really accelerating our ability as the human race to innovate. I came across an example just the other day, which was innovation at a very small scale, but really improved a local business where they were able to use some software to provide instant quotes to their customers as they were on the telephone. You know, previously they were like, oh, that's your requirements, I'm going to go away. You know, we'll ring you back in a day's time. Now customers can ring up, they can get an instant quote. So innovation can be very small, it can be large. Where do those ideas come from? All of these things. Sometimes they're mistakes. We see some great examples in history of mistakes turning into innovation. Dreams, God, I wish I had lots of million-dollar ideas during sleep time. Occasionally I have some inspiration. Certainly trials and observation, sometimes chance. But often what we need to do is we need to let the outside in. And that's exactly what you're doing today on this webinar. You know, you're listening to someone that you don't know, but you're interested and you've taken the time and you've allowed me into your homes and businesses to kind of bring some of my thoughts and ideas to you. So this is the idea, I suppose, of consultancy, a dirty word, perhaps, but often we have to open up our organizations to others, to let them in, to hear them, to kind of mix up the disciplines again. There is another kind of non-linear idea about innovation where you go around this circle. I'm not going to dwell on it, but yes, imagine, design, experiment, scale. The skunk works I mentioned earlier is a very old concept, and I still think this is a great one in terms of developing something rapidly. IBM apparently used this to develop the PC. I know Philips Electronics in the Netherlands used it to develop the LED hue light bulb, the smart light bulb, in the period of approximately a year. But essentially, these are these small groups of people who work a bit like a startup, but they have free reign of stuff within certainly a large organization. Government, believe it or not, has a skunk works. Government skunk works develop things or help develop things like online petitions. So these can exist in any sort of business. Ideally, though, what we want is that continual or continuous innovation. And there's lots of buzzwords, innovation by design. Basically, again, this is thinking about ways to enable your employees to come together and to have these moments. Could it be that they have some kind of lunch club where during lunchtime, someone can bring in some new bit of tech, their 3D printer, they bring it in and everyone talks about it. And they go, oh yeah, God, that's how it works. That's brilliant. Do you know what? We could embed this 3D printer in our business. So that's how those ideas are formed. Okay, quick interlude. We are on 11:06. The nightmare is nearly over for you. Not too much to go. Anyone want to chip in with anything? Okay, I see. Kevin's got a sense of humor here. Johnny Ball, anyone remember Johnny Ball? Yes, I remember that. Let's hope some of these predictions are true.
I'd never heard of that, so I'll be researching that alongside the oxygen and hydrogen. I think they're related to electrolysis. So, but thanks for that, Kevin. Just one thing I wanted to mention, Fraser. You mentioned there's a number of sort of barriers to innovation. I mean, of course, it's not an exhaustive list, but one other I was thinking of is the ability to let go of the past. So if you've got something in decline or not working, there's a sort of tendency to sort of keep hanging on, I think. And I think that's something I've experienced, that you continue to do it in the hope of reviving it, whereas actually sometimes you've got to bite the bullet and move on.
That is so true, isn't it? Resistance to change. We see this a lot in organizations, and I'm guilty myself of resistance to change. I was just on a call the other day, a webinar with some colleagues, and we were on Zoom, and we mentioned we had a forthcoming meeting on Microsoft Teams, and you couldn't believe the meltdown I got. Teams, I don't know how to use Teams. I don't want to do Teams. It happens again at all different levels, but we need people to be accepting of change.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, good thought. Thanks, Mark. Really good. So just a few more slides for you, looking at the sort of sectoral disruptive technologies. And here's one you might have heard of: fintech, financial technology. These are the challenger banks. I'm a big user of this one called Revolut, and it's changed the way I think about banking. And I can exchange my money into different currencies. I've got virtual credit cards, and this is happening not just with banks but with insurers. Those vehicle tracking things. How well am I driving changes my premium. I mentioned digital currencies. The banks were really quick during COVID-19 to deploy chatbots to try and stem the number of calls they were getting. Some of these apps, Santander's just launched one, actually analyze my spending and identify problems with my banking. I think that's really cool. So I had a transaction recently at Screwfix, and the transaction was the same amount on 2 different occasions, and it came forward and said, is this a mistake? So self-correcting financial technology, lots of things happening in fintech, and if you're in that sector, things are changing. Do we quite trust these challenger banks yet? I'm not sure, but certainly if you're in the Barclays, HSBC, Santander, Bank of Scotland, HBOS space, you will be frightened, I think, by what's happening. And then there's property tech. As well as these construction robots, we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on with both buildings and tools and services for landlords. So, you know, Fixed Flow is an example of an app which will help tenants communicate with their landlords. And indeed, we could have sensors, couldn't we, around a rented property to tell your landlord when something needs fixing. There are apps from the, this one on the left here, from the estate agents, which you can sort of use in a augmented reality sense to get ideas of how much buildings are and whether they're vacant and what the values of them are. So that's kind of changing up the buyers and the sellers. And then on the right hand side, I've got an example here of a modular building. And these are what they call buildings for life, where you can move the walls to change on your situation. So if you imagine you're a bachelor, you know, you have one big open plan room, and then as you have a family, you start to break up the room into bedrooms, and then when you're a pensioner, you know, you can make it all nice and accessible. So prop tech and housing and buildings are going to be changed significantly in the future from disruptive tech, as are our legislators and our government and our legal system. Regulation technology, legal tech is something that's here and live and kicking. Think about track and trace. You know, that's an example of where technology has been brought in to solve or help solve a pandemic, not very successfully by the looks of things. But I know that the European Commission are deploying what they call social listening. And this is where they are literally scraping up what people are saying on the internet, on social media channels, to help them develop policies. A great example is the Department of Health, actually, who are using social listening too. They listen, or they've been doing listening on social media to find out when people report they're sick, to try and predict or get A&E beds in the right shape. So there are lots of ways that our governors are using technology to regulate food chain, blockchain. You know, another way of us understanding exactly where our foods come from. So expect some kind of big movements in that field. Education technology is also being revolutionized. You might recognize Class Dojo. That's a way of us keeping in touch with what's happening in the classroom with our kids and teachers. We've got online courses like this one through something called Teachable, which, by the way, you can make money from if you've got a great content. There are electronics for kids, you know, co-clubs for kids. There's something here called NerdPod, which is a augmented reality viewer for people's mobile phones. So actually changing the way that we're teaching kids in classes. So lots of stuff going on here around edutech, and some good startups actually in Lincoln at the Mosaic Hub in this space, which I encourage you to look at. My final slide, before I hand over to Mark, just to talk a bit more about the program, is a bit of futurology. And I said I would attempt to do the crystal ball thing. The futurology is fascinating, and some large corporations have futurologists. Great job if you can get it. BT is one, and I encourage you to go and have a look at the work they're doing. But here's some ideas for you. Aging workforce. So androids will be here with us before you know it. Conscious machines, I guess that plays into artificial intelligence. But I think we might get as far as intellectually enhanced pets. Couldn't that be brilliant? You know, no longer is my, to quote Annie, dumb dog there. It's just, you know, my pet is going to go and make me breakfast in the morning. That could be really cool. Couldn't it help us through our older life? In terms of natural resources, I have got this kind of perverse view on the world that I think we're going to have an abundance of energy, and that could really disrupt some of our energy suppliers. But also, it could create some problems for the world's precious resources. You know, I've mentioned lithium being one that's going into batteries, which we're all striving with. It means that there'll be more recycling, undoubtedly, more reclamation from waste, and some great things going on there. But maybe even war. You know, war over stuff like water. If you think about the example with hydrogen electrolysis, water is becoming an ever precious commodity. On the travel side, I think we're going to see massive changes here. There's a news story already about supersonic return. That's not much of a prediction because I think we will get to supersonic. But how about powered roads, powered cycle lanes, and maglev? This hyperloop idea I think will be adopted. I reckon we could be seeing packetized rail travel. So gone are the days of our trains, but instead on those rails become these small units which are of course automated and synchronized. And that's because we've got a capacity problem. We've got only 0.5% track occupancy, and we've got terrible economics in our train system. You probably know that a lot of our franchised train networks have been absorbed into government now. On the other side, I'm going to make some small predictions about materials mostly. Self-sterilizing surfaces probably moves into the nano idea. But the last three are probably the most important. I think we're entering an era of the care economy. We've certainly seen this during COVID-19, and as as autonomous devices come into play, as robots take over what people do, our ability, our empathy, our human skills are going to become important. We're almost seeing a reversal of globalization, and I dare say COVID has accelerated that, where we've realized we need things closer to home, and we're all going to start having our own food production in our garden because it's so much easier and because we can rely on it and so on. In some countries, we've even seen a kind of self-regulation of citizenship, and I suppose this is again a moral problem, but are we all going to have our citizenship grades? Are other people going to rate us like we might rate our products? And in doing so, is that going to open up opportunities for us, or even send us to jail? So some crazy thoughts for you here at the end, but I hope that you've at least picked up something from the slides today, which you will go off and investigate, or start to think, goodness, that technology is nearly here. We need to start embracing it and thinking about how we can embed it in what we do. So thanks very much, everyone. I am open to a small discussion, but I'm conscious that we're heading towards 11:30. Does anyone want to say anything at this point about the last batch there? You must all be off on Amazon to get their 30% off warehouse clearance today. I think it's nearly Black Friday, isn't it? Look, you've got my Twitter handle, Frazzy123. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's always a pleasure talking to people who are in my local area, so I really do appreciate that. There's been some good discussion today. So with that, I will hand over to Mark.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Fraser. Appreciate that. Well, thanks very much for sharing your thoughts, and I can see some comments coming back. Everybody's really enjoyed that. Gained a great deal from it, and certainly plenty of food for thought there. Yeah, very much appreciated. I'm just going to take a few moments of your time before closing. I'm firstly going to just launch a poll just to ask you how you found today. Very useful for us, and generally in terms of how we run webinars, but also good feedback for Fraser as well. So please do take a moment just to complete that whilst we're finishing the presentation. Fraser, would you mind just forwarding the slide, pushing the slides forward for me?
Of course. Sorry, I'm in control here, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
Technology leaped too far.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks very much. So what I just wanted to do is spend a few moments just sharing is the webinar that Fraser's brought you today is part of an overall program of support through the Humber Business Growth Hub under the umbrella Grow My SME. And there's a particular area of support around what's still called as ICT, but I'm not sure, so it seems a bit old hat now, but sort of around digital technologies and digital adoption. There's a couple of main current sort of live arms to this at the moment. One is the sort of webinar you've seen today, and I just wanted to share briefly the details of the upcoming titles and topics we have available and going into the Christmas break. And you can see that it's quite a variety, really. You know, we've enjoyed what you provided today, Fraser, around you know, looking at the future, looking at disruptive technologies. It's got us all thinking about what's you know, what's coming over the horizon, as it were. You can see that there's various different areas we're looking to cover, including skills around webcams, which we'll probably, or most of us are using a great deal more than we did previously. But varied areas like smart cities, so how technology is affecting how we live and work, Google Analytics, Google Tools, upgrading your workforce to use digital, creating effective websites. So it's a real mixture of, I think, sort of, you know, areas that will help with innovation, looking at your own business, as well as, you know, skills and particular techniques to help you. So please do take a look at those and do join us for future webinars. If you could go lovely, and one more as well, please. Sorry, and I think they're animated, so feel free to just pop them all out there. It's fine. I have a tendency to do this, which tends to be a bit Marmite with my colleagues. Some love it, and some think it's very wrong. But the other program support we're providing is called Digital Catalyst. This is where we've assembled a team of digital technology specialists to help directly with Humber-based businesses, Humber-based small and medium-sized businesses, to adopt digital more effectively. So a very varied team of skills within the team, but the approach is generally, firstly, looking at your current levels of digital adoption as an organization. And looking at how technology is already helping achieve goals and objectives. We then will help you to review what you're doing, with the context of gaining an understanding of your aspirations for your business and current performance. Having done that, then look at ways to you know, what sort of applications and technologies may help you, and with an eye on budget, of course, but largely around what's going to have the greatest impact for your business. Also, sort of, you know, doing that in a way that you know, that doesn't have a particular bias to any technology or any vendors. It's completely neutral. We'll then help search the market to find suitable technologies, and then develop with you, because it will be your plan, an implementation plan or a digital sort of roadmap of the future, really. So clearly you can't always do everything straight away, but identifying technologies that can help, you know, drive your business, but also manage it, you know, so whether that's CRM or moving to the cloud or whatever. So that in a nutshell, it's really, you know, an opportunity to get a real expert in at no cost yourselves. There's no fee for this, and really sort of they can help you to cut through what's out there, look at what you're doing, actually look at sometimes, a lot of the time we're finding helping you to gain more from the technologies you've already got, which is, you know, I think all of us can recognize that with things like Microsoft Excel and so on, where we're probably only using a small percentage of the functionality available. Fraser, lovely, thank you. That's a bit of an overview of the of what's available. So I mentioned we take you through an initial assessment together, looking at the areas I mentioned. Then the support is very flexible. And when we talk about digital technologies, we're thinking the ones that are more familiar to you. So things like digital marketing, CRM, as I say, moving to the cloud, cloud accounting. But also some of the more emerging technologies, the sort that Fraser's covered today, you know, things like artificial intelligence, use of data more effectively, Internet of Things, and those sort of areas as well. I'll be honest and say most of the interventions are more about looking at, you know, incorporating technologies to improve the offer, to improve efficiency, particularly through COVID. You know, that's been largely about how do businesses keep their income levels go? How do they keep their customers? How do they find new customers? But yeah, there really is a sort of full range available, and we will consider with you all that are appropriate. And then finally, sort of creating that digital plan, we can then help find additional support available through the Humber Growth Hub and through other providers, whether that be funding or support. And we'll also try and help you to find suitable technology providers locally who can help you implement it. You know, to give you a good start point. Fraser, if you would, lovely, thank you. So I think in terms of what we're trying to achieve, you know, in summary, identify technologies which will add value, help you to judge the options to you know, what offers greatest value for money. We need to understand what the knock-on changes are with what you're already doing. But then, as I say, cutting through the sort of huge number of different technologies and apps and so on out there to find the ones that'll be right for you, for your circumstance and for your sector. But it's also then thinking about a plan. Okay, having put that in place, how do we then manage it on an ongoing basis? How do we integrate it with what we've already got? Next, please, Fraser. Okay. And just to bring it to life, we do, you know, just some examples of the sorts of areas sorts of projects that we support. When we first started this, we were looking. It was more looking at sort of innovations to solve a problem or to develop an opportunity. That is still available, but you know, I think what COVID has done has made us focus very much more on the specifics of different technologies that can help. You can see some examples there. Hopefully, as I say, it's not exhaustive, but it just gives a flavour of the sorts of areas we can assist with. Next, please. So, yeah, in a nutshell, there, just summing up, really, you know, we can offer one-to-one support with a team of real technology specialists. I think the second bullet point, I won't read it out, but I suppose what we're saying is, you know, with support of this kind, it's important that it has impact. That because, you know, whilst it's free of charge, there's an investment of time for yourselves. So you know, we want to be achieving those sort of areas, whether it's helping to find new customers or helping you to be more efficient or keeping you safe through cybersecurity and so on. You know, it needs to have a positive outcome for yourselves. And hopefully the hand holding, the fresh pair of eyes really do add some value to the business. And you know, lastly, you know, it's providing that shortcut to suitable solutions. Okay, next please. Yeah, and I think I've probably touched on that already. So yeah, just I think that obviously we're keen to have those impacts. They're the contact details. Please do give us a call. We will. I think I do like Fraser. I do recognise some of the faces and names today. So thank you very much for joining us again. For those that we haven't contacted, we will look to give you a quick call just to see if this can help. But please do, you know, proactively contact us if you think we can help with some area of digital technology adoption. Okay, next please. Wonderful. And yeah, we just got a summary slide. The growmysme.co.uk. So that is the sort of the umbrella arm the umbrella brand, I should say, for the Humber Business Growth Hub support. And you can see there underneath is a summary of the sorts of things available, grants and access to funding, but also you know, various other one-to-one support, supply chain assistance, and so on. So you know, please do use it. It's a free resource, and in some cases, obviously, funding is available. So yeah, please do take advantage of what's available. Next, please. And that's it. I've sort of just a very quick summary at the end there. We conscious that we were working to try and finish for 11:30, which I think we're just within about a minute or two of. But I'm very happy to take any final questions, or of course, if you have any final questions.